Today we're going to talk about MP145, a planar magnetic IM from Hidizs. MP145 shares the same packaging style as the previous releases, with a black and rose gold color scheme. The box is smaller than usual. On the plus side, it is made of sturdy plastic rather than cardboard, so you can use the box to store a few IMs and accessories. Inside the box, you find the IMs themselves, a carrying pouch, an IM cable, 9 pairs of silicone ear tips, and 3 pairs of tuning nozzles. The cable is an improvement over the previous releases from Hidizs. It has a 4-wire design with high-quality hardware and a 4.4 termination option. The cable is fairly stiff, but it does not kink or coil upon itself like the previous cables from Hidizs. The ear hooks are also much more comfortable. The carrying pouch does not offer much protection, but it is easy to operate and it keeps the IM organized in my bag. The earpieces feature a solid full metal build. The machining seems high quality with sharp details. Let's talk about fit and comfort. Right off the bat, I found that MP145 is not the easiest IM to wear. It requires a slightly deeper fit. Otherwise, the ear hook of the cable would pop out from behind my ears. However, MP145 has stubby nozzles that make deep fitting a bit challenging. It's good that Hidizs provides 9 pairs of ear tips because you will need to experiment. I would recommend shorter ear tips with a wide opening. You might need to go one size smaller than usual to enable a deeper fit. With the right ear tips, I found that the comfort of MP145 is quite decent. This IM is well vented, so I didn't have any pressure buildup or driver flex problem. So how does this sound? First, let's talk about tonality. Let's start a subjective impression with vocal music from Pentatonix. When I listened to the Bohemian Rhapsody, I found that the bass line by Avi is very prominent in the mix, followed by the soprano by Kirsten. The mid-range by Mitch and Scott stays behind the bass and the soprano. I found myself wanting to turn up the volume a few notches to hear the mid-range more, but I couldn't because of how loud the bass is. The vocals have just a touch of metallic timbre, and at the same time feels a bit too smooth, lacking some texture and microdynamic. On the plus side, the treble has just enough energy without becoming harsh or sibilant. Moving on to Mendelssohn Violin Concerto. Despite moving to different genre, I have similar impressions. The bass frequency is slightly overpowering comparing to the mid-range. In particular, the orchestra feels weighty and powerful, but there are moments when it seems to take over the spotlight of the soloist. The violin also sounds a touch more metallic and artificial than what I expected from this recording. Just to be clear, MP145 does not sound flat out wrong, but if you pay a lot of attention to texture and timbre of the violin, you might not be satisfied by the presentation of the MP145. Next, we come back to pop music with a live performance by Ed Sheeran. Immediately, I hear a powerful bass response from both the kick drum and the bass guitar. Every kick is loud and impactful, and it is quite easy to follow the bass line. At the same time, the kicks and bass notes have quite sharp attack and decay cleanly. The treble is energetic enough without becoming harsh or piercing. Cymbals and hi-hats are present in the mix and show some nuances and details. Again, the mid-range is slightly behind the bass and the treble, and slightly metallic. The voice of Ed Sheeran lacks some warmth and richness that can be found in a few other IMs with better mid-range performance. On the plus side, MP145 does not introduce unbearable shoutiness or sibilance to this very sibilant recording. The frequency response of MP145 aligns with the subjective experience. The overall sound signature of this IEM can be summarized as warm V-shaped, with a strong emphasis in the low mid-range and mid-bass. The tonal balance leans towards the bass instruments and drums when they exist in the mix. Hi-hats and cymbals are present but not piercing or overpowering. The treble air is also present, but it is not the highlight of this frequency response. Zooming into the mid-range, we can find a mild ear gain boost starting from around 800 Hz and peaking around 2.5 kHz. This conservative ear gain explains how MP145 avoids the shoutiness and overly forward vocals. It also explains why the mid-range vocals and instruments sometimes seems to be overshadowed by the lower frequencies. The treble of MP145 is generally smooth without rolling off too early. The only emphasis in the treble response of MP145 is around 8 kHz, evidenced by the presence of cymbals and hi-hats in the music. The bass of MP145 is potent, with emphasis in the mid-bass region, which is the thumpy bass that you can hear. At the same time, there's enough sub-bass to provide a physical sensation to accompany the bass kicks. The sense of macrodynamic, which is the large swings of loudness, is properly conveyed by MP145. Despite the generous amount of bass, this IM does a good job as maintaining the clarity of the bassline. I suspect that the planar driver plays an important role here. MP145 has 3 sets of tuning nozzles. They impact only the upper mid-range region between 2 kHz and 4 kHz. The treble nozzle sounds very close to the balanced nozzle, but perhaps with just a touch more presence and clarity. On the other hand, the bass nozzle would completely transform this IM into a different sound signature. Personally, I use the treble nozzle for most of my listening. Next, let's talk about resolution. For the first resolution test, I used the third movement of the Summer Violin Concerto by Vivaldi. I find the instrument separation of MP145 to be good but not great. There were minimal smearing between instruments, but the boundary between them is not laser sharp. I have to spend more effort if you want to follow individual instruments in the example. The level of separation and note definition showed here by MP145 are quite similar to the level of the Buntrop Blessing 2. For the next test, we listen to Cavaco's performance of Bach's violin sonatas and partitas. MP145 does a good job at revealing the details in the violin and at highlighting the reverberation of the recording hall. I still think that MP145 lacks a little bit of microdynamic and texture in the violin, even though the actual detail retrieval is quite good. When I compare MP145 with Blessing 2, I found that the detail and texture of the violin is ever so slightly behind the Blessing 2. However, the sense of airiness and reverberation detail of MP145 is noticeably better than Blessing 2. So, in conclusion, I would say the resolution of MP145 is roughly around the level of Blessing 2, which I consider good. Finally, let's talk about Soundstage and Imaging. For the Soundstage test, I listened to the live album by Hans Zimmer. MP145 does an excellent job at conveying the sense of space, making all recordings in this album sound spacious. I often find instruments to appear just outside the ears or above my head. In fact, if you only consider the size of the stage, I would say MP145 does an even better job than something like the Campfire Audio Andromeda 2020. However, when I pay special attention to the structure of the soundstage, my excitement for the soundstage of MP145 was dampened by 2 limitations. The first one is a lack of depth. To put it simply, the soundstage of MP145 feels like a flat and wide wall of sound inside my head with minimal projection toward the front of my head. The second limitation is the precision of the instrument placement and separation. The flat and wide soundstage puts the MP145 in the same bracket as the Buntra Blessing 2, which I consider to be good. So how do I think about this IM? In summary, Hidizs has done many right things with the MP145. The overall tonality is less divisive than the previous releases like MD4 and MS5. The open and spacious presentation is a big plus. I also enjoy the bass response of MP145 in bass-heavy music. These positive aspects together create a decent value proposition for the MP145. That being said, there are still some aspects that Hidizs can improve in the next release. For instance, the soundstage could have more depth and layering. I also found that the mid-range of MP145 to be held back by the slightly metallic timbre. The texture and microdynamics of the mid-range could also be improved. Finally, the nozzles could use a redesign to reduce the size. So, would I recommend MP145? It depends greatly on your music library and how meticulous you are about the timbre of the instruments. I wouldn't pick MP145 for my orchestral and classical library. However, this IM would do a great job with thumpy bassy music. If you have been looking for an IM with thicker mid-bass and lower mid-range, MP145 is also a good option. Well, that's all about the Hidizs MP145. As usual, thank you for watching. Subscribe for more and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.